Well, thank you very much. I think it's, we love being part of the accessibility community. We love being part of London Accessibility Meetup, and there's some more cool stuff coming from us this year around sponsorship and support outside of London, because we realise that as much as we all live in the centre of the world, as London often gets perceived as, there's a whole world of people outside of London that also need to know about accessibility. So vulnerability is one of those things that we don't talk about very much. It's a bit of an awkward topic sometimes, and I think often people don't feel comfortable talking about vulnerability because there's a perception that if you're vulnerable, maybe you're weak, or sorry, I'm just going to put that on flight mode, or that actually it's a negative thing, and people aren't that keen to tell their bank that they're vulnerable for fear that we might take away their credit card or take away their house or never give them finance again in the future. And so that's why talking about people and talking about situations when you might be vulnerable is really, really important and is getting increasing focus in financial services, as you'll see through my presentation. I first gave this talk about a year ago, just before World Mental Health Awareness Week. And it really worked, this talk, just before that, because I got to tell the audience about the fact that it was Mental Health Awareness Week, and lots of people didn't know that. And then I got to tell the audience about my dad, and how this talk was actually inspired by him. So my dad has bipolar, and he won't mind me telling you that, because he's also, if you know the campaign, he's also the inspiration for a campaign called This Is Me, which Barclays started in 2013 and is now spread to a couple of hundred companies around the world. And it's a storytelling campaign, and he was the inspiration for that as well. But the fact that my dad has bipolar doesn't mean that he's always vulnerable, but it means that sometimes he's really, really vulnerable, particularly with money, because one of the symptoms of bipolar, and particularly the manic elements of bipolar, is just a bit of a, I don't really care about the future. I don't really need to worry about money because there's always going to be money there for me, and so I go out and spend lots of it, even if I don't have it. And that's definitely the case in my dad's situation. Now, luckily, my mum has had a lifetime of living with my dad's bipolar, as has he, and they were set up and ready 10 years ago when he had a really, really bad series of manic and depressive cycles. But not everybody is as lucky as that, and so what I want you to think about through this talk is that whilst I'm going to frame this from a financial services point of view, we all have a duty to make sure that we think about vulnerability and people who could be vulnerable using your products and services through the design and development and testing of the things that you build. So, before I talk any more about vulnerability, I have to do the obligatory advertisement. So how many of you know who Barclays are? How many of you happen to be customers of Barclays? Good. The complaints line is, no, anyway. So I'll try and get that in. So for those of you who don't know, Barclays is more than a retail bank. We're more than just a bank on the high street. We are what's called a full-service universal bank, and that basically means if there's a financial requirement that you have, we probably have a product to suit you. So whether that's like your first bank account that you're ever going to need, or a mortgage for your house, or a hedging product for your international organisation who wants to head on the euro-dollar exchange rate, then there's probably something we can do for you. That's the advertisement over. So we're relatively large. We've got smaller over the last couple of years for various reasons. So there's about 80,000 of us, and we service about 48 million customers across the world, and about 36 million of those are in the UK. And we've got this ambition, so we've got an ambition to become the most accessible and inclusive FTSE company for everybody. So this says customers and clients. We also mean colleagues as well, because we see our colleagues as customers as well. But what's nice about this statement is that for us, clients means anybody who's not a retail customer. So if you're not on the high street, if you're not just somebody wanting to put their savings into an ISA, for example, then you're a customer. If you want to do something more interesting than that, you're a client. So we don't have a a reason for doing that other than the fact that it's the right thing to do. Advertisement over. Vulnerability. As I said, it's become quite a hot topic in financial services over the last couple of years. So much so that the FCA, who is one of the main regulators in the UK, decided that we should define what vulnerability means and what vulnerable circumstances mean. So this is the definition they came up with. I'm going to read it because it's not particularly useful. Well, it's very useful. Sorry, it's very useful, but not particularly well written sometimes, and doesn't make a huge lot of sense a lot of the time. But it says, so someone who is in a vulnerable circumstance is someone who, due to their personal circumstances, is especially susceptible to detriment, particularly when a firm is not acting with appropriate levels of care. Basically, what they meant was if you don't think about people who may be vulnerable, they might lose some money, or they might not be able to access your services in the way that you intended them to. And they came up with this definition a couple of years ago, and it's one that actually, if you took out of financial services, and if you took out of the word firm, because that's a very financial services word, actually this could apply to any industry. And basically says, make sure you look after your customers, otherwise you're going to cause them problems. Now I want you to talk a little bit, before I talk about vulnerability too much more, about the different types of impairment and the kind of different groupings of impairments that we broadly see in the accessibility and inclusive design world. And I wanted to make sure that we're clear on the difference between a vulnerability and an impairment. Okay? So broadly speaking, we think, and I think there's a general consensus around the fact that there are three groups of impairment. So you've got permanent impairment, which we all would probably say and group as a disability. So it's something that lasts longer than 12 months. In this case, the loss of a lower arm. There's temporary impairment, which is basically injuries and short-term health conditions. In this case, a broken arm. And then there's situational impairment, which is the thing that you are doing right now is causing you to be impaired. And that tends to be super short-term. In this case, it's a parent holding a child in their dominant arm. Now, when you look at these people from an pure accessibility point of view, they all have the same requirement. They can't use one of their arms. Okay? But whether they are vulnerable or not will depend on how well you have designed the website or the application or whatever it happens to be that they want to use at that point in time. So if it's a mobile phone, if it's a mobile app, then as long as they can use the app with the hand that that isn't impaired, then they're not vulnerable. But if they can't, then they could be vulnerable. Now, vulnerability is one of those really hard to define things. It's not an exhaustive list. It's not like a set of disabilities where I can tell you, here are all of the opportunities to be vulnerable. But what I can do is help to explore a whole host of different situations where you might be vulnerable. And some of these, when I've given this talk before, people don't always agree with them. But let's see how we get on. I shouldn't have drank a Coke because it's making me really, really burp quite a lot. Apologies. And that's on the live stream. Great. Hi, Mum. So buying your first house. How many of you have, in the last 12 months, bought your first house? Congratulations. How many of you have moved house in the last 12 months? I moved about a month ago. Theoretically, that process could make you vulnerable. Because, particularly if you're a first-time buyer, that is a scary thing to be doing, right? There's not a huge amount of good information out there about buying your first house. And so because that's a financial situation, that this is the first time that you've done it, because you're only ever a first-time buyer once, you could be vulnerable in that circumstance. Same with having your first child or having any X number of children, both from the point of view of the fact that one of the people in your relationship or you yourself are losing an employment or are losing some level of financial input into your life, and the fact that you don't then know how long you might be out of employment, and then the fact that you have the stress of dealing with this new person in your life could make you vulnerable. So could losing a loved one. Couldn't find a graphic for that, so we've got a slightly older lady. So losing a loved one could make you vulnerable because grief does that, can make people vulnerable. As can, this is gambling addiction, because I couldn't find a graphic for gambling addiction. We'll talk more about gambling addiction later on in the talk, so remember that one. Losing your job. I kind of thought he was like a waiter, and so he might be on 0 hours contract, and so he might lose it. Anyway, you can tell that we have a relatively limited set of graphics we can use. Age at both ends of the spectrum could make you vulnerable. So if you're young, and this is from a financial services point of view, I should have said. If you're young or if you're older, you may be vulnerable. I hate saying this one. If you have a non-standard banking requirement, I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. Or if you have a disability, again, you could be vulnerable. Doesn't necessarily mean you are. A non-standard banking requirement basically means if you aren't in full-time employment and you can guarantee your income, or if you've gone away and come back again. So if you're in the armed services, you've gone out and been deployed and then come back to the UK, for example, that could make you vulnerable because you've not had to look after yourself financially for a certain amount of time, and you have no proof and no sort of history of a banking relationship that could make you vulnerable. But like I said, it's all about could make you vulnerable and not does make you vulnerable, because vulnerability is circumstantial and it's individual, so it's personal to the individual. Right. Okay, I didn't mean to show that slide. So what I wanted to do was to see whether we could have some ideas about the scale of vulnerability in the UK. Now, the last talk stole one of my answers to one of my questions, so we'll see whether anybody remembers. So the average reading age in the UK is, oh, I heard 7 and 9. Oh, there was a 7, 9. Well done. Yeah, so it's 9. We'll look at that in a second. The percentage of UK adults who have less than £300 in savings. Any guesses? 20? 40? What was it over here? 70%. It's about 50%. So half of UK adults have less than £300 in savings. I'm trying to remember what else is on the slide. The numeracy, the number of adults in the UK who have a numeracy level lower than 11. Percentage or fractions? It's the same thing. Okay, we'll not do too much guesswork, but yeah, so 1 in 7 adults in the UK have a reading age of 11 or lower. 1 in 2 adults in the UK have a numeracy level expected of a child of 11 or below. Just as a reminder, 11 is the age of you are before you go to secondary school. So this is primary school levels of numeracy and literacy. 1 in 2 adults in the UK have less than £300 in savings. 300 quid, really? By 2020, half of the UK population will have had a cancer diagnosis. 1 in 6 people over 80 have dementia, and 1 in 8 adults, have an unpaid caring responsibility for a friend or family member. This data is from a guide from 2017 from the British Insurers Association. Coke again. The literacy one always shocks me, if I'm quite honest. Does anyone know what the reading age of the Times newspaper is? 13, 14, 16, 12, it's 11. Yeah, and the Sun newspaper? 8, 7, 16 months, 4, it's about 7, give or take, depending on which person you're reading. Not that particularly matters in the Sun, but there you go. So vulnerability is actually much more prolific in the UK population than people think. And I kind of think this data proves that. The 1 in 2 UK adults without £300 or more than £300 in savings, is it any wonder that rough sleeping is increasing? Is it any wonder that sofa surfing is increasing? Because you're 2 paychecks away from living on the street. Statistically speaking, most people are 2 paychecks away. Just let that sink in. So from a financial services point of view, vulnerability is super, super scary and super important. So how do you apply inclusive design principles to vulnerability? Well, you start with some good principles, like these ones from the Paciello group. So these are a set of inclusive design principles that you can get from inclusivedesignprinciples.org. It's a really nice resource if you haven't seen it before, but it's focused around these 7 principles. So providing a comparable experience, giving control, offering choice, considering situation, being consistent, prioritizing content, and adding value. Now I want to really quickly look at 3 of these. And I'm not going to choose consider situation, because we've talked about the fact that this is situational. That would be the easy one. But what we are going to have a look at very quickly is give control, prioritize content, and add value. So I'm going to use some Barclays and other financial services examples in here. I'm using them for illustration. I'm not saying they are perfect, because they're definitely not. But I wanted to have something to demonstrate on screen for some of them. Not this one, though. So giving control. So this definition of giving control is directly from the principles. So give control says that you should ensure that people are in control and that people should be able to access and interact with content in their preferred way. How many people use Amazon one-click? How many people have the day after shame of using Amazon one-click? Yeah. So I think as a society, we've become more and more used to the removal of friction in processes. And it's really dangerous from a vulnerability point of view. And you'll see that in a little bit when I talk about gambling addiction and how we can better support people with gambling addiction. But there's some things that we can do that don't force friction down people's throats, but they give people the choice of adding some friction back in again. And the examples that I've given on screen are things like if you have the ability to slow down someone's checkout experience, or the ability to slow down someone's delivery experience if they so choose. So for example, and you'll see an example later on from Monzo, we're actually putting some delays into the process, particularly when people know that they have vulnerability around late night shopping. Will really help remove some of the angst around that. And I've sort of said about alerting other people of late night shopping. We had a couple of examples last year of some customers who told us that they had what they called the pride and shame loop of online shopping, where they were completely in the moment and really wanted that new pair of shoes or that new phone or that new television or those awesome new trousers or whatever it was that they wanted. And they clicked buy and they went to bed at 2 a.m. because that's the time they were doing it at. And then by 7 a.m. when they woke up and saw the email, they were like, oh my God, what have I done? I bought £12,000 worth of clothes in the last month, and I really need to do something about that. So the idea here is that you add extra people into the process, and you can see we've got this idea of guardians and helpers. They kind of say, this person's just done this. They've told us that actually this type of behavior is the things they do when they're vulnerable. Do you want to reach out to them? Or could you approve this transaction for them? Now, I'm not saying that you should do that by default. What I'm saying is that giving people the option to add friction back in is much better than allowing people to go back into that shame loop. And actually, probably will save some money from an organization's point of view, because returns to online shopping brands continues to rise, and it only continues to cause problems environmentally and financially for organizations. The next one was prioritize content. So this is about helping users to focus on core tasks, features, and information by prioritizing them within content and layout. I don't know about you, but I get to some websites sometimes and I just go, what am I doing here? I knew that I came here for a reason, but I'm having a moment and I just can't remember why I'm here because there's too much going on. There's a really nice talk from an amazing guy called Eric Myers, who is from what I understand, a bit of a genie in the CSS world. In 2015, he talked about the need to design for crisis, and how organizations who support individuals financially, emotionally, and from a medical point of view, or indeed when they're in critical circumstances, need to better design their websites for crisis. So picture the situation that Eric was in 2014, I think it was 2014, where his daughter, on a holiday, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from their home, collapsed and was seriously ill and was airlifted to hospital in a city that he didn't know and in a hospital that he had never been to. And he talks in his YouTube video, which I recommend that you watch, about sitting in the back of a stranger's car, driving at speed to the hospital, on the hospital's website, furiously trying to find where on earth his daughter was, and completely missed the fact there was a telephone number on the website for him to call, because that was not his frame of mind. He was holding a mobile phone, because that's what he was using to stuff, and the fact that there was a telephone number completely just didn't register with him. It's a fantastic and very emotional talk, and I'd really recommend that you watch it. But designing with those types of vulnerabilities in mind helps us to think about the edge cases and the reasons why people are coming to us. And I'll show you in a second something that we've introduced relatively recently on our website, where we prioritize content based on what's happening in the world at any particular time. But examples where this is really important are the things like the death of a loved one, and we're going to talk about that in a second, financial worries like gambling addiction, and issues that are beyond their control. So increasingly we're seeing administration of companies as companies go out of business, and we've seen quite a lot of that recently, but often it leaves people vulnerable, particularly with airlines going bust. There's an example of Premier Air a couple of months ago, and another one since. Imagine if you're in a different country and your airline goes bust, and the vulnerability that you feel at that moment in time, and how people connected to that process should be there and able to support you. Now, I can't go through a talk at this point in the year and at this point where we are politically without mentioning Brexit. So I'm going to mention it once, and once only to demonstrate a point. So this is the Barclays homepage right now. Please don't look too much. We're going to move on quite quickly. But what I wanted to do is just to highlight that this space here, so half of our screen real estate right now and above the fold, is dedicated to Brexit. Because lots of people are very, very worried about what it means for them financially. Before they put this up, it was the #1 search thing on our website. We use that data to go, right, people are worried about it. We're going to prioritize that content and put it on the screen. Because people are not going to know on this website with this navigation where they're going to find anything about Brexit. So it goes here, right front and center. Now, it should be up here if we're thinking about it from a purely inclusive design point of view. But this is, we can't, it's marketing content. So this is where the money is, apparently. Whereas this, hopefully, and what's nice about this, actually, when you go through to here, and you'll see in a second, we don't just talk about what it means from a financial services point of view and your banking relationship with Barclays. We try to say, look, this is our view of Brexit. It's not pretty, but here's how we're going to help you get through it. And I think it's really important that organizations take a more holistic view when they think about how they support people in vulnerable circumstances, or circumstances when people are really genuinely scared about what's going on. The reason I wanted to show you this page, though, was not just because of Brexit. And actually, talking about Premier Air, the first time I gave that talk, it was a couple of days after this talk. It was a couple of days after Premier Air went bust, and we had a similar message here that says, don't panic, we'll help you through it. If you came to this page and you knew somebody that you loved had just died and that they banked with Barclays and that the money that you needed to organize their funeral was inside that account, where would you go? How would you get the information? So I thought people might go to one of 3 places. They might go to search, they might go to contact us, or if they're particularly unusual, they might go to service and support, because I don't think that represents anything particularly good. If they did go to services and support, this is what they'd see. There is a help option here, but it's alongside lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of other options. If they searched, they'd get here. And if they happen to search for death, then the first result is what to do if someone dies. Interestingly, the third result is what happens if your batteries die. Anyway, both of these two they say the same thing. They actually go to the same place, but the reason that they're written slightly differently is because the data showed that people were searching slightly different things. And so we wrote the SEO function that sits in behind here to make sure that the search is right, pulls back two options just in case people want to phrase things differently. The reason I wanted to show this particular example isn't because of how people get there, but because of this page. This is what happens when you finally get to the page about death. The thing that I liked is that the first thing we tell you isn't how you tell us about what to do when someone dies. It says what you should do first before you come to us. So this accordion here, the second one, is what you should tell Barclays. But we only tell you that once we've helped you understand the process generally for telling organizations that someone has died, because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't know how to do that. What I'd probably do is go, oh my God, I can't afford a funeral. I wonder if they had any money saved for a funeral. I wonder if who was their bank account with? Right, well, let's go and ask them. But you can't do these other steps, any of these other steps, until you've done this first one. And if you didn't know already, there's a service called Tell Us Once from the government, which means you can literally tell the government once about a death. There's a similar service in financial services that has come up. It's a separate service, but that does the same thing. But this goes back to the point that I was making earlier about the responsibility that organizations have for dealing with vulnerability. It's not just about saying, well, we're going to tell you what you need to do for us and just us. I think it extends into, look, we realize this is a tough space for you to be in right now. Here's how you can do stuff and how you can be supported a bit more. The last one was add value. So this is about considering the features that the person holds in their hand, because they're probably using a smartphone that's got more power in it than processing power than computers did for 20, 30 years. And how we can use that to improve their experience. So that could be things like using location services to provide support for people who are in vulnerable circumstances. So the example I gave was, if you're on holiday and something happens, where's the nearest branch that you could go to? Because Barclays used to have services and branches in other countries, for example. Or indeed providing things like live chat on pages of help and support, because often people don't want to pick up the phone, particularly if they're vulnerable from a financial point of view. People find it really difficult to talk about money. Generally, some of you might have seen, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, some of you might have seen the Lloyd's adverts that are running at the moment called around the M word. Basically, they're trying to do something like this, where they're trying to encourage people to talk about money, because we, as a nation, we're a bit repressed when it comes to talking about money, and it's really dangerous, and we do need to be better at it. I wanted to, how am I doing for time, Al? Okay, cool. I'll rattle through this stuff. So I wanted to talk really quickly about building in friction. I'm going to show you a Barclays example, a non-Barclays example, and then like an extra one, because I think there's some really nice stuff going on in this space. So this is the Barclays mobile banking app, and I want to talk about gambling addiction for a second. And I want to talk about it because I have some statistics on it, which helps. So 430,000 UK adults have a gambling addiction. And the Gambling Commission estimates that nearly 2 million people are at risk of becoming addicted to gambling, which, given the climate that we live in, where every advert on Facebook videos is for a gambling company, and when you're watching any sport, you've got gambling stuff thrown at you constantly, so it's unsurprising that we have a problem with gambling. But we kind of have recognized that we need to empower people to have more control over their finances. And so at the end of last year, we introduced the ability to close certain payment channels off. So if you have the mobile banking app, you can go into merchant control. It's really badly labeled. It's not particularly accessible. But inside merchant controls, you get all these options for things that you can switch on and off. Now, I did ask them how many people wanted to switch off the ability to buy petrol and diesel or groceries in supermarkets. But the fact that gambling is number one on here is really important. The Institute for Money, the Institute for Money and Mental Health suggested that this was the approach that we should take. And you'll see in a second how Monzo have approached it. In the first 4 months of this being, first 3 months of this being live, 36,000 customers accessed this page. About 9,000 of them have set a block, and half of those are a gambling block. So we know that, and we haven't advertised this particularly. It sort of was, we did it through the news once, and this self-exclusion is becoming really useful. There's definitely some work to do here to build out some functionality, and I'm going to show you what I think is actually better than what we have, which is rare, I think, to be able to say that. From a bank point of view, to say that we think someone else is doing better, normally everyone says that we're doing things amazingly well. Monzo have taken this a step further. They have a thing that just says block gambling transactions, and you can't switch it off without talking to somebody. Right now in the Barclays app, let me show you. So once you go in here, there's a little rocker switch, and you just flick it on and off until your heart's content. In the Monzo app, once you turn it on, you have to talk to somebody from Monzo to switch it off. And even then, when they say, OK, that's fine, it takes 48 hours to re-enable it. Now, the reason this is important is because the research from the Gambling Commission and the Money and Mental Health Institute suggests that once people get the opportunity to step away from an impulsive situation like gambling or like buying something impulsively, they're far more likely to say, actually, do you know what, that wasn't the right thing for me to do. I shouldn't do that. And so this removes this impulsive approach. Monzo reckon, and these numbers were from last year, so it's probably a lot higher, about 25,000 of their customers now have enabled this feature. Any Monzo customers in the room? I have a question for you. Keep your hands up. Put your hand down if it's not your main account. As in, if it's not the account you get your salary paid into. Right, so it's interesting that, and I use it exactly the same way. It's kind of a card over here that I like because they're doing some funky stuff, but anyway. What Monzo have not made very public is that out of these 25,000 customers who have this enabled, the cash withdrawal rate is much higher. So they've closed the problem over here and created a problem over here. You can't solve everything, but it's useful to know that this isn't a silver bullet at all. It's part of the solution. The other thing that they have proposed doing, but they haven't done, because it's really complicated, is adding late night spending option into the app. So this year, they released these designs in May 2017, before they got their banking license, so they had a bit more time to play with. And what this does, basically, if you buy after, I think it says buy after 10 p.m. After 10 p.m., then it will the next day it will send you a summary of the things that you bought when you were in that vulnerable place and say, you sure? Do you really want to spend that £122 on eBay? Or that £93 at ASOS? I like this. It's generally, the Money and Mental Health Institute reckon this is a great way forward. There are some challenges with this. For example, how do you convince Amazon not to send something straight away? How do you switch off a Prime subscription when you've already started using it from your mobile app? Anybody know anything about open banking and the stuff going around? Yeah. So basically, open banking says that you can connect your bank account to anybody that you trust. So in theory, in the future, this is possible. Thank you. I'm nearly done. So what can you do to think about vulnerability? So include it in your design thinking, in personas, for example. Include people who've experienced vulnerability or who are currently vulnerable in research. That's a bit, I wasn't sure when I wrote this, because there's some ethical things going on around including people who are currently vulnerable in your work. So worth thinking about. But I definitely make sure you include people who have experience of vulnerability. Make it OK to tell you about vulnerability. Technology is not going to solve this problem. because it'll only take us so far. The human touch is far more powerful, and we rely hugely on our colleagues in our branches and in our contact centres, and who you will talk to on social media if you're so inclined, to spot and to think about people who are vulnerable. Use the data to spot it and make people aware of vulnerability. Hopefully you found this talk interesting and that you found it to be a new topic. I've got to recap, but that's fine. This is how you can get in touch if you want to find out some more. This link doesn't work at the moment, so please don't go there. We're a couple of months out from launching a brand new accessibility portal where we're going to shove all of our resources for the first time. So hopefully that will be useful. If you want to get in touch, please do. Before I finish, I want to say, at the start I sort of said how proud Barclays are to be part of this community. We're really conscious that as quite a large organisation, we have a role to play in this world. And on that basis, if anyone ever wants to talk about accessibility, if you want to find out more about what we do, if you just want to spend some time with one of our consultants having a chat, then please get in touch. And we're more than happy to give some of our time to help. We won't come and do an audit for you or give you training necessarily, but we will gladly give you some of our time. Thank you.
Let's start with questions from here. So, how do you check your finance how do you check your finance statement are valid to vulnerable customers, i.e. accounts are correct? Also billing, how do you communicate this via your tone of voice?
Not quite sure what you mean. That's a good question. So financial services is often held up as a really bad example of how to do plain English. We're really conscious that we don't do it well enough, and we're in the process of creating some content and copyright training. So to answer your question, we don't do it very well right now, and we want to improve. If you have any feedback, if you're a customer and you'd like to see stuff changed, get in touch, because that's the only way we're going to make progress.
How do you create your personas?
So our process for creating personas, so the personas we've got out at the moment were a combination of working with real colleagues in our organisation. We have a fantastic disability network, and we borrow heavily from colleagues' lived experiences in that network, plus complaints. So unsurprisingly, we get quite a lot of customers telling us we don't do very well, which is quite nice. Lots of them on social media. If you want to follow us on social media, you will see that we respond quite a lot to people telling us that we're not doing a great job. We actually think that that's another thing, by the way. Social media is a great place to get feedback. Have a channel specifically for getting accessibility feedback, because it's eye-opening. So we use a combination of real colleague, lived experience, complaint data, and imagination, because we had to make them quite broad.
How do you recruit vulnerable people for research?
We don't at the moment. It was a thing that I said that you should do, but at the moment we don't actively do it because we're still grappling with the ethical bit around at what point is it okay to recruit someone who is vulnerable. So if you think about someone who's lost someone, someone who's died, how do you quantify when that person is okay enough to do some research? We haven't got to a safe place with that yet as an organisation. I should have said, I suppose, at the start, we're doing some of this. We're not doing it very well. Hopefully this was more of a thought piece than this is a case study. But yeah, that's what we're grappling with right now. If anyone has any thoughts, then we'd love to hear it. But I think, particularly with grief, is it 6 months? I don't know. Is it 6 years? Is it 10 years? At which point then does it become irrelevant, because they've already had so long after the process that they've forgotten what they went through. And will they ever remember? So it's a difficult one.
Yeah. What helped Barclays decide to prioritise registering death before Contact Us? How was it researched?
In all honesty, I don't know, because I wasn't involved in the process. It just was a nice thing that I pulled out. We have done a lot of work around things like power of attorney and around how you support people who have lost the mental capacity to manage their own finances, and registering a death sort of came out of that, because it kind of, in some ways, and it's horrible to say, but in a lot of cases it's a natural progression. When someone hands over power of attorney, it's likely that they are on the roads to then, at some point in the future, needing to register a death. So it was part of that overall process, and it was part of how we redesigned the website over the last few years. So I don't know exactly why that was prioritised, but also I think some of the stuff the government have done around Tell Us Once has then improved how financial services look to do that.
Cool.
And a steer from the regulator has helped as well.
If you could do anything else to make Barclays or banks in general better for vulnerable users, what would you do?
Oh man, there's not one thing. I'd probably try and get us to use plainer English. I think that is, you saw the statistics around literacy, both numeracy and written literacy is really poor in this country. We're doing some work with kids around a program called Life Skills, which tries to do some of that. But if we're only doing that and not trying to improve ourselves, I think that's a stumbling block. So I'd like to see Barclays and other financial services organisations look to use plain English a lot more.
Cool. How many people in your accessibility team? How long has it existed? And is it global?
Oh, good questions. So there are 9 people in our accessibility team. 5 of those are consultants. 2 of them are apprentices, because there's not enough talent coming through the pipeline, if I'm honest. So we've got a couple of apprentices at the moment. We've then got my boss, Paul, who you might know, but he's not a consultant because he's useless. Hi, Paul. And then we've got an administrator who helps with, who's primarily Paul's PA, but also does lots of other stuff for us. So yeah, we've got 5 consultants, 2 senior consultants, and 3 they're not junior consultants, but they're mid-weights. And we're all based in the UK, but we support globally. So I was doing some number crunching today. We each support about 150 products, 4,500 bits of change a year, across those 44 million customers. So we see everything from the mobile phone app that you saw earlier through to our trading platforms and everything in between. So I'm tired.
How do you measure the impact of products designed for vulnerable customers?
That's a tough one. We don't actually design products for vulnerable customers. We design products for customers who at some point in their lives might be vulnerable. And I think it's important to make that distinction, because in the same way that as an organisation we used to produce accessible services, excuse the language, but special services for special people, rather than continue to do that, what we have done over the last few years is go, that's very nice where we can't do something in the mainstream, but the mainstream is where we want to be. So flipping it on its head and saying, how do you check that the things that you make for everybody work for people who are vulnerable? We're starting to see that through this inclusive design work, but we haven't got a specific approach to it right now.
And last question, I think. Do Barclays provide any free support for people who are struggling to manage their finances and are having mental health issues as a result?
So we recently launched a couple of pages on our website that talk about how you can get support if you have a mental health issue or if you are vulnerable. You can get to that from the homepage. Scroll it down. It's on the homepage. That includes a whole range of different things depending on your individual circumstances. And I don't work in our retail business, so I can't go into detail. But we have a huge team of people who sit under a program called Barclays Financial Assistance, which supports our customers when they do get into financial difficulties to make sure they can continue to do what they need to do. But some of that is also relationships with organisations like Step Change and Gamble Aware, and lots of other different organisations that our colleagues are connected into, but also get training from on a regular basis. We also run a vulnerable customers programme and have a vulnerable customers team. If any of you know Catherine Townsend, she sits in the vulnerable customers team, as well as an amazing guy called Matt Robinson, whose sole focus is making sure that as a bank we become more inclusive for people with mental health issues. We're not there yet. There is hopefully some nice stuff coming later this year. But as always, if you have any thoughts and feedback as a customer or a non-customer about what you'd want to see, then at Barclays Access, if you tweet them, we always take every single bit of feedback and put it into our development teams to see whether it floats or not.
I think we're out of time, but was there anybody that wanted to ask a question but wasn't able to ask on the app? One at the back. You can make it really quick.
I'm also hanging around for a bit, so if you've got a question, just come and ask. I'm probably coming to the pub as well, if you want to come to the pub. Yeah, hey Raf.
Hi there. I was just going to ask, in relation to people with bipolar and impulsive spending specifically, what steps are Barclays and other banks doing, do you think, to try and help monitor and prevent that? Because I remember a talk a while back from someone from Monzo talking about having a relative sort of step in and put these checks on, but everyone I've known personally with bipolar wouldn't dream of letting their partner or someone close to them monitor their spending.
So I have to be careful because there's some stuff that I know is coming that I don't know enough about to be able to tell you, or that I get impaled for telling you. So the idea of having someone else approve transactions is an interesting one. It has the challenges that you mentioned, and so I think that actually something like this is nicer. The challenge is always going to be, at what point does an organisation step in and say no, when it's still your money? At the end of the day, it's still your money. I think there's a difference between helping people to manage spend like this and being conscious of how you stop people from getting into a situation where they might have borrowed £30,000 on a whim. And there's always going to be that balance. And I know that it's a constant struggle to make sure that balance isn't too far in anybody's favour. And I honestly don't think there's a single solution. I think a lot of it comes down to how we enable people who our customers see every day to be able to spot the signs and to have conversations. Because, like I said, technology can only take us so far. This kind of thing you can switch on and off. Yes, this one takes 48 hours to switch off. All you have to do is be able to bluff with an agent, and you can unlock it. So I don't think there is a silver bullet. There's a really nice report from the Money and Mental Health Institute on their website that talks about their recommendations, which includes some of this stuff. Even that, I don't think is going to be enough to really give people certainty. So I don't have a great answer for your question, Raf, but I generally think there's a move towards recognising that banks and financial services institutions, and actually I think beyond that, all organisations have a responsibility to raise the flag and go, we don't think you're okay.
Thanks.
But it's difficult, particularly with GDPR and those types of things as well. It gets really messy, so I'm not going to talk about that. I talked about the first time I did this presentation, someone asked me about GDPR, and that went really badly. So don't ask me about that.